My father has never been a great father. He doesn't feed me, basically starves me. I'm sitting in my room without food and I have to rely on the free meal that I get from my school lunch. But on weekends, I have nothing to fall back on. So I was forced at a very young age to get a job. But then all of a sudden, Miss Perfect, stepmother, she comes into my life, and you want to know what she tells me? She doesn't tell me, hey, you know what, I'm here now, I'm going to look after you. No, she doesn't. She tells me if I don't contribute my paycheck so that they can pay the rent easier, I'm going to be kicked out. Guys, I spend all my money at my part-time job on food. It's how I survive. How am I going to pay rent? And then I found out something absolutely devastating. I never knew that I would be one of the people who post online about my own life. But since I think I might implode from keeping it all inside, here I am spilling it out for the world to see. I'm 14 years old and living with my dad. My parents got divorced when I was 9 and my dad won my custody. Not that my mother wanted to have anything to do with me anyways. In the last 5 years, she never called nor came to visit me. Not even on my birthday, and if I look at it like that, at least my dad is better since he's still letting me live with him. But that doesn't change the fact that he's not that good of a father either. He acts as if I'm not there. He spends most of his time out and never bothers to ask if I need anything. It's been a while since I've gotten something for myself, and I'm talking about necessities like clothing or school expenses. Every day he comes home late at night smelling of booze and raises a havoc for literally any reason. Sometimes it's why the floor isn't clean, why the dishes aren't done, and why I did not respond fast enough when he called me. Other times it's something as ridiculous as me leaving my shoes near the door or forgetting to turn off a light. I try to stay invisible, quiet, obedient, and small, hoping that maybe today will be different, but it never is. Most nights I lie awake listening to him stumble around the house, slamming doors, muttering things I can't always make out. I've learned to predict the storm, his mood shift, like I'm some kind of weather forecaster. If I sense one coming, I retreat to my room, headphones on, drowning myself in music or YouTube videos. It's not much, but it keeps me sane, at least for a while. Lately, things at home have gone from bad to worse. My dad used to at least stop by the grocery store once in a while, but now he doesn't even bother. The fridge is empty, the pantry is nothing but some expired cans, and some nights the only thing that I can eat is a stale cracker, if I'm lucky enough to find them hidden in the back of the cupboard. I've learned to survive off the scoundrels of food, the free lunch at school, but that's only one meal a day and it's hardly enough. The hunger gnaws at me on weekends when I don't have school to fall back on. Desperation, it led me to start scavenging behind local restaurants. At first the shame burned inside of me like acid, but the hunger will make you do things you never thought you were capable of. I quickly learned which places tossed out food at the end of the night. Half-eaten sandwiches, bread, leftovers still in takeout containers. Yeah, it's embarrassing, I know, but it keeps me alive. As the days passed, I realized I could not go on like that. What if someone from school saw me stealing food from dumpsters? I needed some kind of security, so I started looking for a job. After weeks of searching, I finally found a part-time job at a local convenience store. It's not much, just a few hours after school, stocking shelves and running the register. The pay is barely above minimum wage, but at least it's something. You know, I got to eat decent food now, bread, milk, and even a few snacks. It feels good to have that small bit of control over my life, like I finally have managed to take one thing back from the chaos. But working after school comes with a price. I'm constantly exhausted, barely able to keep up with the homework or stay awake in class. I'm falling further behind, and teachers have started asking questions. I lie and tell them everything's hunky-dory. What else can I say? That I have no choice but to work because otherwise I won't eat. Nobody wants to hear it, and even if they did, what would they do? But then everything changed the day I came home to find a stranger sitting in my living room. She was pretty, long dark hair, perfectly manicured nails. I could smell the flower perfume from the doorway, overpowering the familiar mustiness of our home. She glanced up at me and smiled in a way that sent a chill down my spine. I didn't know it then, but that was the first time I met Hannah. Hannah, my dad's new wife. It turns out that while I was working my butt off just to keep the food on the table, my father had gotten married behind my back without even telling me. He had not mentioned dating anyone, let alone bringing someone new into our home. When I asked him about it, he just shrugged and said that he didn't think it was such a big deal, as if that was perfectly normal to get married and not tell your only child. He also said that he did not need my permission with his life decisions. Within a week, Hannah moved in and started redecorating. She brought in all kinds of new furniture, decorations, and none of which fit the worn-out look of our home, making the place feel like a mismatched display of things that did not belong. Hannah has already taken control of the house, and I can't even touch anything without her permission. She'd cook, but only enough for 2 people. I'd stopped going downstairs to the dining table, especially when I knew that I'm not welcome there. She even disposes of leftovers to make sure there's nothing left for me. The worst part is my own father does not seem to bat an eye. The changes did not stop there. Hannah had opinions about everything. From how I kept my room to how I dressed, and even though I could afford new clothes, she made comments about my hair, saying that I should, quote, at least try to look presentable, and scoffed whenever she saw me coming from work. Things really went downhill when Hannah found out I was working. She must have sensed it since I came home late every day from school. Last week, when I came home from the store, I found her already waiting for me in the living room. Her arms were crossed and her face was set in that tight, disapproving expression I was beginning to recognize all too well. I ignored her and went straight to my room, but she stopped me. She confronted me at the door to my room and she said that she knew I was working after school. She didn't seem impressed. In fact, she sounded almost offended, as if I had done something wrong by not telling her. She told me that since I was earning money, I need to start contributing to the house. I tried to explain that I only made enough to buy food for myself, but she wouldn't hear it. She said I was living under their roof, and that meant I had to pull my weight like everyone else. According to her, if it was only fair that I either give her half of my paycheck or start paying rent. She said my dad agreed with her on this, and I couldn't believe it. I told her I was just a kid and barely made enough to cover groceries, but she dismissed me like it was nothing, saying it wasn't her problem and that if I didn't like the rules, I could always leave. When I tried to talk to my dad, hoping he would back me up, he just shook his head and said Hannah was right. He told me it was time I learned some responsibility and that Hannah was only trying to teach me to grow up. I felt like the ground had taken a fall from out from under me. My own father was siding with a woman he'd known for a few months, and I was being treated like some ungrateful freeloader in my own home. After that, things only started to get worse. Hannah's constantly throwing taunts at me, calling me a freeloader and an inconsiderate daughter. She calls me selfish, and especially when Dad's around, she keeps saying that I'm putting too much burden on him and that I should not think about him. Dad just stares at me like he's some kind of victim here, and his pretty little wife is his savior. He's been giving me the cold shoulder since then, and not that we were close before Hannah, but it wasn't that bad. At least he didn't treat me like a burden in my own home. It was becoming unbearable. Please let me know what I should do. Should I start paying rent? What am I supposed to do? Any sort of advice is welcome. Update number 1. So I took the advice most of you have given me, and I have straight up told my stepmom I'm not going to pay rent. It happened last Friday when I came home from work. She and Dad were sitting in the living room watching TV, and I confronted them then and there. I said they had no right to ask for my share when I wasn't even allowed to have their food. I'm working so I don't die from starvation and cover my school expenses, which Dad never cared for anyways. Well, with that, I stomped into my room. I thought that might bring them to their senses, but things just turned even worse. Hannah has begun leaving lists of things that she wants me to buy. Groceries, cleaning, supplies, whatever she feels like I should be responsible for. She smiles sweetly as she hands them to me, saying that since I'm not paying rent, this is at least what I could do and that I needed to do my share. If it didn't stop there, though, she's even making me clean the house and doing laundry, and after I come back home, I find the kitchen a mess with a pile of dishes to do and everyone's dirty laundry. I didn't protest. As long as they get out of my hair, I'm fine with a little more work. But no matter how much I do, it's never enough. If I clean, she criticizes how I did it, saying I must have missed a spot or two or didn't do it right. Every task has to be redone until she's satisfied, and to be honest, she seems to enjoy watching me struggle. She's even started snooping through my stuff whenever I wasn't home, taking whatever cash she found, claiming it was for rent. She even went through my backpack and took the food I brought back from the store, saying it was unfair for me to keep things for myself while living in her home. My dad, as usual, is staying out of it. Whenever I try to talk to him about how unfair things are, he either avoids the conversation or tells me to listen to Hannah. It was like he had completely checked out, leaving me to deal with everything on my own. At this point, the school has become impossible to focus on. Between my shifts at the store, the constant chores, and Hannah's demands, I'm exhausted all the time. My grades are starting to slip, but when teachers ask if everything is okay, I don't know what to say. How can I explain that my dad has married a woman who treats me like a servant, and that I'm terrified I'd be kicked out if I don't do what she says? I just told them I was overwhelmed and that I'd catch up eventually, but I'm not sure if I believe it myself. There are nights when I think about running away, imagining what it would be like to pack my things and just disappear, but then reality would hit me. I don't have anywhere to go. I have no family I could turn to, and my friend's parents would not be able to take me in for a long time. Even when the little money I earned, I cannot afford to rent a place on my own. I just simply can't. It feels like I'm trapped with absolutely no way out. Yesterday, in the nighttime, after Hannah yelled at me for folding the laundry wrong, I locked myself in the bathroom and cried quietly. I hated crying, it felt like giving up. But I was so tired of the constant pressure, the loneliness, and the feeling that no matter what I did, it would never be enough. I couldn't see a way out of this, and that thought scared me more than anything. This morning, I still dragged myself back to school and then to work, hoping to make it through another shift without falling apart. I don't know how much longer I can keep going like this, but quitting is not an option. If I stop working, I won't have money for food, and if I don't have food, I have nothing. Somehow I keep on going. I just keep moving. I tell myself that I just need to survive long enough for things to change. Maybe eventually Hannah would lose interest in tormenting me. Maybe Dad would come to his senses. But what if I'm a bad guy here? It's all started to weigh down on me, and I don't know what to do. If I agree to pay rent, I won't have anything left for me. How will I afford food, let alone school expenses? Updates. Number 2. Hey guys, it's me. I can't believe what happened in the last few days. I feel like my entire world just flipped upside down, and honestly, I'm still trying to process it all. I never thought that it would come to this, but something inside me snapped last night. After months of pretending everything was fine, working, cleaning, surviving, I realized I could not just keep doing it anymore. Hannah's constant nagging, my dad's indifference, and the never-ending exhaustion left me feeling completely hopeless. But what happened next absolutely changed everything. It started when I found out Hannah had gone through my backpack. Yes, again. This time she took the tips that I earned from my shift. You know what? That is what I consider the absolute last straw. Because at this point it's just getting to be absolutely horrible. Guys, I confronted my father and Hannah in the living room. Just like that. Oh boy. Furious that they had stolen from me, and all Hannah did was laugh, saying, "Don't be such a baby," and she did it to help her husband. She constantly tries to paint me as such a bad daughter, and guys, do you want to know what the worst part about the entire situation is? My dad, he sat there silently, actually pretending not to hear a word. Can you believe it? That night, after sobbing in my room for hours, I finally made the hardest decision of my life. I called my mother. For years, I told myself she didn't care about me. She never called, never visited, and I hated the idea of calling her, but I couldn't stay here anymore. And maybe, just maybe, she'd have some answers. When I dialed the number, my hands were shaking so bad, I almost dropped the phone. I had no idea what to expect. Part of me thought she'd hang up or tell me she didn't care, but I was desperate and had nowhere else to turn. But to my surprise, she answered on the third ring. And what she told me, it's hard to even write. At first she was quiet for a moment, probably as shocked as I was that I reached out. But then she said my name and I already felt like crying. What followed was a conversation that flipped my entire world upside down. I told her everything about the neglect, the hunger, Hannah's bullying, and my dad's betrayal. At first she just listened, but then as I went on, her voice grew angry and angrier. I could feel the rage bubbling through the phone, and it was not directed at me, it was for him. That's when she told me something I never expected. Turns out my mom's been sending child support payments every month since the divorce, and guys, we're talking absolutely huge payments. Yeah, that's right. Enough to cover everything I've been missing. Groceries, clothing, school supplies, and more. She assumed my father was using the money to take care of me. I could hear the shock and anger in her voice when I told her that not only was I working to feed myself, but I was being forced to pay rent and do all the housework. She was furious, to say the least. She didn't know why I thought she abandoned me, but apparently my dad had blocked all her attempts to reach me after the divorce. She said she never wanted to leave me and had been sending letters and emails, none of which I ever saw. My dad had kept everything from me. I can't believe my own father can do this to me. How could he? I don't even mind him spending my money, but the least he could do was to provide for my basic necessities. Everything has gotten out of hand as of right now. I'm not going to confront them right now. I need a plan. I'm determined to teach them a lesson for their unfair treatment of me over the years. What should I do? Please let me know in the comments section. Update number 3. Hey guys, I'm back, and things have been so wild lately. After finding out that my mom has been sending child support payments all along, and my dad was pocketing them, I knew I had to do something. But instead of immediately confronting them, I decided to gather some evidence and make them face the truth in a way that they could not deny. So, I decided to keep an eye on my dad. He always claimed he was working long hours to provide for us, but the truth didn't really add up. He'd leave for work late, come home whenever he felt like it, and seemed to take leave whenever he wanted. It didn't look like somebody who was struggling to keep up with a demanding job. I reached out to some of his former coworkers and found out that he had actually quit his job months ago. They mentioned that he had been missing from work frequently before that. It turns out that he's been lying to me and my mom about having a job just to keep getting those child support payments without doing any of the hard work he claimed he was doing. Feeling frustrated but determined, I decided to put together a plan. One day, while we were out, I went through his stuff, including his laptop, and that's when I hit the jackpot. On his desktop, I found a draft of a resignation letter. It took only a few minutes for me to go through the emails to find the official email sent to his HR about his resignation. I took pictures of said email, knowing I might need it later, but that wasn't enough for me. I went through the rest of the emails and took pictures of everything that was proof of any recent purchases my dad had made. In Hannah's purse, I even found bills and receipts from nail salons, restaurants, stores. It was more than enough evidence for me. If both of them weren't working, it's clear, well, where they were getting the money from, huh? They were using the money meant for me to fund their lifestyle, while I was the one who had to pay rent and do most of the chores. I waited until dinner when Hannah, as usual, tried to lecture me about how I needed to be more grateful for everything that they were doing for me. That was when I decided to strike back. I calmly told them that I knew my mom had been sending child support all along, and that I had proof that my dad wasn't even working anymore. The look on their faces were priceless. For the first time in a long time, they didn't have anything to say. Before they could say anything, I went to my room and called Mom. "I need your help," I said. She said I have nothing to worry about and she has already hired a lawyer to take care of things. Now it's only a matter of time before Dad and Hannah fall flat on their faces. I'll keep you guys updated about what goes on next, so please do wish me luck. Update number 4. Hey guys, this might be the last update. Here's the latest on what happened. So as you can remember, the last time I was here I found out about my dad quitting his job, and that my mom had already hired a lawyer. Things have turned out for the good for once in my life, and after gathering all the evidence I could, like those emails from my dad, and the shopping receipts from Hannah, I sent everything to my mom. She said it was a huge help in building a case. True to her word, she filed a lawsuit the very next morning, and things started moving faster than ever. Within just a few days, my dad was served with legal papers. I overheard him and Hannah arguing about it. I can't lie, it felt kind of good to see him panicking. He had been so comfortable leeching off child support and ignoring my needs, but now he was facing the consequences. It was like everything he had done was finally catching up. When the court date finally rolled around, I was a bundle of nerves. I had to gather my thoughts and prepare to share my side of things, which was honestly intimidating. But my mother was there to support me. Walking into the courtroom, I saw my dad sitting there looking anxious. And the worst part was that he was there alone and his dear wife was nowhere to be seen. Once my mom started presenting the evidence, everything unraveled for him pretty quick. She showed all the child support payments that she had made over the years, and my dad did not have a reasonable explanation for where the money went. I could see the judge getting increasingly frustrated as my dad stumbled through his excuses. Then it was my turn to speak. I talked about the neglect I'd faced, the adult responsibilities I was forced to take on, and how I often had to choose between basic necessities. The whole time I was speaking, my dad was looking at me wide-eyed, like it was something that he had never expected from me. I couldn't keep it in and began to cry. When the judge announced the ruling, I thought my heart might stop. Custody was granted to my mother. My dad was ordered to pay the money that he had taken in back tax, and he was also ordered to find a job and pay child support from now on. For the first time, I saw my dad looking scared and vulnerable, and I felt a huge sense of satisfaction knowing that he would no longer escape the consequences of his actions. You know what, guys? After everything wrapped up, my mom and I shared a big hug. She was so proud of me for standing up and finally sharing the truth. I feel like everything I've been through has made me stronger, and now I can finally be with a parent who actually loves me and will take care of me. As for Dad, I don't care what happens to him. He can go to hell for all I care.